So my name is Jennifer Holleman, and I was born and raised in the Annapolis Valley, and I have two beautiful daughters, Madison and Tori. In 2015, I lost my oldest daughter, Madison, to human trafficking in Edmonton, Alberta. Madison was a pretty active child right from, the time that she was able to walk. She was always on the go doing things. She was very active in extracurricular activities at school. She was a hockey player. She played rugby. She was an amateur boxer. I boxed for 13 years as an amateur, and in 2007 opened my own club in Yarmouth, and Madison was my star athlete. She was a two-time Canadian national champion in the boxing ring. She was a French immersion student. She was an overall good kid, and she had lots of friends, never really withdrawn from her friends or activities or anything like that. So I guess I'm really surprised that this is the path that her life took. Madison actually, I think its control started being exercised with a boyfriend, and in Yarmouth, when I was living in Yarmouth, she was probably at the age of 17 at the time. And I think that the father of the young man she was in a relationship with, I found out later, was active as a pimp in Calgary. And I do believe that's where the seed was potentially initially planted for her. In 2012, Madison moved to Grand Prairie, Alberta, and that's when the trafficking began. Of course, at the time, you're not thinking human trafficking, and I didn't really know a lot about human trafficking at all, and it wasn't until she moved out west and I received a photo of an individual that was very badly beaten beyond recognition, and it took me a few minutes to actually realize that it was in fact Madison. And after doing a lot of digging, after the fact and after Madison's death, I did see a lot of red flags, but sadly I did not see a lot of those flags leading up to her, becoming trafficked and, essentially leading to her death. Constantly changing phone numbers was a big deal, or having multiple phone numbers at the same time. The control, which I mentioned from the boyfriend, trying to reach out to her, her phone not being answered when we clearly had, I'll say, a mother-daughter pact that no matter what the situation, please always answer your phone, please always text me. There were times when she would just, what I felt like literally disappeared off the face of the earth. I couldn't find her. I couldn't reach her by phone, by text. I had no idea where she was. She was gone for days, sometimes weeks at a time. Just the calls maybe going from actual FaceTime phone calls on a regular basis to just voice calls on the phone. I do believe now that's because she didn't want me to see her face. I do think she was beaten on multiple occasions, and that was just her way of hiding the truth from me. A little defensive over the people that she was with and spending time with, and maybe potentially boyfriends. When I would question things, she would get very upset with me. But at the time, you just think that that's a teenager and that's their actions and that's what they're actually just trying to be a defensive child, basically. You're not going to control me, I'm on my own, and you're not the boss of me, that kind of attitude. That's what I thought it was at the time. And then now looking back, I think that it was just obviously so much more than that. So she was actually killed in a car accident in Edmonton. She was killed on White Avenue. The car was traveling 125 kilometers an hour in a 50 zone under heavy construction. The car went over the median, hit a decorative boulder, severed off a tree, and landed upside down under the awning of an apartment complex. And they told me that she was killed instantly because her C5 was broken. There's a lot of things with respect to the accident that I'm not convinced 100% that my daughter was actually killed in that car accident. And one of the things that stands out the most to me is that she had gel nails. That's one of the things that they're always done up. Their hair, their nails, their clothes, the way they're dressed. Her nails were probably better than an inch long. And if you could have seen the car that she came out of after that accident, when she came home to me, albeit in a plywood box, I remember the very first thing that I noticed was that not one of her fingernails was broken. And I have a really hard time with that. Your C5 is broken, that means your neck is broken instantly, and all communication from your brain to your body ceases to exist. I mean, I did read text messages on her phone. The individual that she was with in the vehicle the night she died was in fact John. He made it very clear that he was picking her up, the vehicle he was driving, the vehicle he said he would pick her up in was the vehicle that my child was killed in. Madison was having correspondence with an individual that, I'll call him her protector maybe. She was having this conversation before she was picked up and basically was told, telling her individual on the other end of the text, I don't really like this guy, and the other person says, why don't you like him? And she said, because he never wants to bring me home. So did Madison know something? Did Madison say something? I mean, my brain automatically goes to him grabbing her by the back of the neck and bouncing her face off the dash of the car, instantly breaking her neck and then feeling like he had to cover up the death with a car accident, because there's too many things that don't make sense to me. The driver of the vehicle was sent to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries, but probably a month almost to the day after Madison's death, he died. So as soon as he passed, I was told that the investigation was finished and there was no further investigation into who he was, why was he in the car with her. They didn't look at the phone, they didn't ask any questions, they just simply closed the investigation. And I do believe and I feel like I will never know that information, if it was true or not true, but I do speculate there's so much more to it than what I actually know. And getting her phone back from Property and Exhibit, had an opportunity to read hundreds of texts that were on there from clients that were setting up meetings for her and hookups in hotels, or if they were in calls or out calls, and it was very disturbing to see the things that I read. I do believe that towards the end, she didn't have anybody that was actively working as her pimp, because I was reading conversations between her and an individual on her cell phone. He was put in her phone as fresh, and he was trying to encourage her to let him be her pimp. And she was pretty much telling him, why would I want you to manage my money when I can manage my own money? And that's how the conversation was going. So I think that she was trafficked for probably a year or better, and then I could see signs in her emails and such that she was actually trying to pull herself away from that lifestyle. But I think she was, in the end, probably doing it on her own and putting herself out there by herself, because that's all she knew. And that's the only way that she felt she could make money. Although it's interesting, I did see an email, she was applying for random jobs, like at Tim Hortons or Starbucks or wherever, just to try to get out of that, but she was unsuccessful. I believe that I'm drastically affected by what happened to her, and I think the biggest thing is knowing the torture and the heinous acts that were done to her, and the beatings, the tortures, the rape. Her hair was set on fire, she was burned with cigarettes, she was burned with lighters, she was raped, gang raped by multiple men on one specific occasion that I do know of. And I found proof on her telephone of, the people that did these things to her, and no matter how many times I went forward with what I believed was evidence of her abuse and the fact that she was in fact trafficked, no one was ever held accountable. There was never any justice found for my child. I know that I've tried to forgive, the individuals that have done these things to her, and at one point I woke up and believed I actually had been able to do that. And then when I speak at conferences or talk to certain people, then certain things rear their ugly head, and I just feel like, you know what, I haven't forgiven, and I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to do that. It's hard. Do I have faith? My father was Dutch. We came from a Christian family. I went to church every Sunday. And now I just find it hard to believe that there is God. Because what God would, A, take my child, and what God would take my child in the manner that he did after putting her through the things that she went through. So I have a very hard time with that. And it's just difficult for me to not get elevated when talking about certain things with people. And I'm doing my very best and working really hard at trying to maintain my composure through things and not get so aggressive when I speak. But I'm not sure I'll ever be able to not be that way. And that's not who I am as a person, and so I struggle with that because I can't seem to shake any of those things, and it's awful.